everyone. Thank you very much for being here, whether you're joining us on this rainy day in Montreal, whether you're joining from somewhere else, which was warmer in weather. Thank you very much for being here tonight. This is Noran Ahmed, Secretary of the MWAA, McGill Women Alumni Association. On behalf of the MWAA and our co-host, as usual, for every year, the McGill Young Alumni Association, thank you again for being here to attend this event about entrepreneurship, especially from the lens of women. A little bit briefing about the MWAA. We're an association that has been existing around since 130 years. We represent all women graduates of McGill. We get together to brainstorm, to launch community initiatives, and to seek the better for the McGill community and for the larger community as well. The MYA represents all the graduates of McGill throughout the last decade. We are I consider myself to be a younger alumni because I graduated in 2014. So we are the McGill Young Alumni. This is an organization that represents the graduates, the fresh graduates throughout the last decade. We help them with initiatives for their careers. We help, again, the bigger community and the McGill community. We join each other every year to launch this Toolbox series. And we thank you again for being here for this year's session. I'll leave the floor now to the program vice chair and the co-host of the event tonight, Noura Bourdi.
Thank you so much, Noran, for welcoming us. Before we get started, I'd like to quickly mention that the event format will consist of a moderated 30 minutes discussion led by me, after which my co-host, Abdel Maskhar Shafi, president of the McGill Young Alumni, will join on screen for a special Q&A with you, the audience. We look forward to receiving your questions for the panelists that you can submit at any point to Abdel via the chat feature. Today, we're delighted to have with us Adele Archer, who graduated with a BA from McGill in 2012. She is the CEO and co-founder of Eterneva, a celebration of life brand that reimagines the experience around loss by making diamonds from ashes or hair. Eterneva was named Consumer Startup of the Year by the Stevie Awards and was featured on Shark Tank, receiving investment from Mark Cuban. Adele has been featured on both Inc. and Forbes 30 under 30 lists. And prior to founding Eterneva, she received her MBA in entrepreneurship at the Acton School of Business, considered the Navy SEAL of program for entrepreneurs. Adele spent 4 years as a product marketing leader in tech, launching major products to market with partners like Amazon, eBay, Facebook, Pinterest, and Twitter. We also have with us Dr. Jasmine Hume, the founder and CEO of Shiru, a sustainable ingredient company that uses patented technology to discover and produce functional proteins from nature. She is also a partner at X Factor Ventures and the former director of food chemistry at Eat Just. Jasmine graduated from McGill in 2006 with a bachelor's in chemical engineering and holds a PhD from NYU and a master's of science from Chalmers University. And last but not least, we have Jacqueline Ling with us, who graduated with a Bachelor's of Commerce in 2014. She's the co-founder and CEO of Hatchways, a tech recruiting startup that helps companies hire talent based on their skills rather than their background. Jacqueline is a finance grad at McGill University and launched her first startup, a fashion app, in her final year, which went on to be acquired by Kik Messenger. Jacqueline led partnerships and products for chatbots at Kik before she left to start Hatchways, which went through the Y Combinator in 2019. So to kickstart the conversation, I'd like to invite each of you to tell us a little bit about your company and its mission. Perhaps, Jasmine, would you like to start?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nora. Really happy to be here, really excited to be talking to this group this evening. So I'm the founder and CEO of Shiru. We are a company that makes sustainable ingredients. You might have kind of heard about this alternative protein movement where, folks are developing all kinds of great alternatives to meat or dairy products. And a lot of those most successful products really rely on very technical ingredients that really overcome some of the challenges related to taste or texture when you're trying to swap out, traditional animal-based ingredients with those that are plant-based. And that's where Shiru comes in. So we are a B2B company. You won't see any branded packaged food products under the Shiru brand in the supermarket. However, we are developing and selling ingredients to the world's largest food companies that then formulate those ingredients and then deliver them to the market. So creating ingredients specifically that really focus on reducing our reliance on those that we get from animals today. So really focusing on ingredients that have a net positive effect on the environment. That's really what we're all about at Shiru. We use patented technology to do that. So really at our core, we have a platform that looks quite similar to what you might find in a drug discovery company. We just happen to be using it for food. Really happy to be here. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Jacqueline, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. As Nora introduced, I'm Jacqueline. I'm one of the co-founders of Hatchways. Hatchways is building a platform for companies to help them run real world interviews for engineers so that talent is hired based on their ability to do the job rather than their ability to interview well. Our mission is to help people get hired based on their skills rather than their background, resume, network, or their ability to interview well. This was a problem that I personally faced for many, many years. I've always hated interviews. I've always felt like it was a very unfair process and wanted to build a process that was just more equitable and ultimately helps companies hire the best talent.
Thank you so much, Adele. Over to you.
Sounds good. I love both of their businesses. That's so cool. So my name is Adele. I'm one of the co-founders of Eternova. And thank you, Nora. Appreciate the intro. What we do is we celebrate people when they pass away by making real diamonds from the carbon in their ashes or hair. So if someone chooses to get buried, we can still honor them. We do this for both people and pets. And I think what is really unique about Eternova is we're really like, across the end of life landscape, one of the first companies that have really done a direct to consumer business model and built a brand around what we do. A lot of companies in the end of life space white label, and then they go to market through the funeral home. And from day one, like we just really decided to lean into going to social media and building a brand and opening up a different kind of conversation, because our kind of bigger mission is wanting to destigmatize this just as a conversation that we can have, not make it weird that we talk about our loved ones who aren't here anymore and that they get to continue to be talked about and their stories told. So, that's really kind of on the mission side. And then with our customers, we've really designed a whole experience around the diamond creation process. It's a very intricate process, a lot of science involved. And as we go, we send pictures and videos and updates. And we've really learned that as an experience supports somebody through grief. It's kind of a meaning-making project for them to focus on. So that's really on a customer end. What we focus on is how do we support more people in finding meaning in the wake of loss, because grief is tough.
Fascinating. It's so interesting, and it makes me wonder, simply, why did you start your business? Where did the need for your product stem from? And Adele, you offer such a unique product, as you were saying, in an industry that we don't often hear or speak about, the death care industry. So perhaps you'd like to start here to tell us how and why it all started?
Yeah, totally. It was not, me growing up and saying, I want to be in the funeral industry one day, like for sure. It was kind of random. Excuse me, I'm still getting over a cough. But originally, my co-founder and I, we thought we were just going to be getting into the regular lab-grown diamond industry. And this was back in 2017. So it was kind of earlier stages with that technology, saw it as a really big up and coming opportunity. A lot of younger people resonating with just like knowing the origin of your diamond, knowing it was sustainably made. And so we were working with diamond scientists, and we thought we were just going to build a brand there. And then I actually had my really close friend and my business mentor, her name is Tracy, on a personal side of my life, get diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And really shortly after she got sick, she passed away. And I was one of the people that was taking care of her as she was dying. And she wasn't married and didn't have kids. And so it was just a couple of us that were like her family. And she's like, you know what, I'm going to leave my ashes to you guys and just do something meaningful with them that you think we would all really like. And so we're going through that exercise. What do you do with ashes? What are your different options? How do you honor somebody? How do you keep their legacy alive? And, you do the Google research and you hit on like a bunch of really old school websites that are just like tacky, transactional, products, kind of trinkety stuff. And it's just nothing that felt meaningful and that resonated. And we weren't finding anything. And then over dinner one night with this diamond scientist we're working with, I was telling him about Tracy, and he's like, well, I mean, there is carbon in ashes. So if we could figure out how to get the carbon out of Tracy's ashes, then I might be able to grow you a diamond from that carbon source. And he just blew my mind. I'm like, oh my God, 100% we're doing this. Like whatever it takes, we're doing this. And so Tracy was the first diamond that we made. And it just became so clear, like standing in the shoes of, being our first customer is like, I think a lot of people would resonate with this if presented in the right way. And so why not focus over here where there's just like such a blue ocean, and such an opportunity to create a better experience and a better brand. So that is Tracy. That's her black diamond. I wear her every single day. Actually, both of these technically are Tracy. And yeah, she was our first customer, our first loved one.
Wow, what a meaningful story. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. And Jacqueline, Hatchways is changing the ways companies recruit. What made you decide to start your business?
I think it was such a personal, like I mentioned, a personal frustration I had. Even though Hatchways wasn't my first company, it's a company that I've always been passionate about, this idea of like when you learn something, do education, and try to get a job, all the difficulties there are that are part of that. When I was in my last year of university, I'm sure many people here can resonate with this feeling of, oh, I need to apply to all these jobs. I have back-to-back interviews. Everything feels so high stake. You're so stressful. I had to network my way to getting to a bunch of these interviews of top companies that I was really excited to work at, because I didn't really have a network and I didn't have the highest GPA, and I had to find a way to kind of get into interviews. And so when I finally landed all the interviews, it honestly felt like it was like, it's all or nothing. And I just don't perform well in interviews in that way. And so I did all these interviews in my final university. I didn't land a job, and it completely crushed my confidence. And for a long time, I think it made me feel like, okay, maybe I'm actually just not suitable for these jobs. Like maybe I actually just, there are better people at this. Maybe I don't have the skills. And so it stuck with me for a really long time, this idea of like, interviews must be a reflection of how well you're going to do on the job. Fast forward a little bit, I ended up getting into an entrepreneurship program instead of getting a job out of university. And I started my first tech company, which went on to get acquired a couple of years after that. And then I was then at the company and starting to recruit, and on the other side of the table, interviewing people. And it was just a very eye-opening experience. You're now the person who is recruiting and interviewing people, and you're hiring people, and you're seeing, okay, the people who performed really well in interviews are not our best performers. And people who sometimes we hired on a whim because, you were a co-op student or you were an intern, didn't really interview you, but we just thought we would give you a chance, and you just performed super well on the job. We just started to realize that the best way to evaluate someone's skills is put them on the job, or evaluate them on something that would be real world. So it was kind of a personal experience, both from an applicant and interviewing experience, but also as a hiring manager and a person who recruited a lot, realizing that you can get the best talent not by going through a traditional interview process.
Very, very interesting. I think a lot of people in our audience can relate to this frustration with interviews. Thank you for sharing. And Jasmine, of course, you had a great role in the food chemistry industry. What was the need that you identified for your product and that started Shiru?
Yeah, happy to share about it. Yes, I think, there's always like there are multiple aspects to why anyone might start a company, and I think that was definitely true for me. I was working in the industry, had a great job at a really innovative company, which was Eat Just, or they were formerly known as Hampton Creek, but we were working on all kinds of plant-based food products and had some things in the market. And we're building out like this crazy discovery capability to basically find and categorize all these new ingredients to build all these other products from. And I was leading that. It was like dream job, totally awesome. We had at the time a lot of interest from big food companies that wanted to partner with us. And for strategic reasons, it was never part of Eat Just strategy to license any tech or to do any collaborations with other big food companies. And so I thought that that was a massive opportunity, and basically, learned a lot, both on like the technical side, but like also how to build teams, how to lead teams, and also on the business development side, that I thought that there was like a lot left to be done in this space, and maybe even in a way that's like actually much more efficient, faster, can make cheaper ingredients, like all of that good stuff, which was a huge opportunity. It wasn't immediate. I mean, I like started ideating about this almost when I was still at Hampton Creek, and then, left. I took about a year where I consulted in the industry because I wasn't quite sure. I was like, really, this is going to be a big endeavor. Like this type of like synthetic biology, biotech company, I'm going to need to raise hundreds of millions of dollars to scale the business. It's going to take the next 10 to 15 years of my life. And that's a massive commitment. So it wasn't like I just like, pranced out of the door and I was like, yay, I'm doing this, easy peasy. There was a lot of like thought and consideration to it. So basically built that case for myself first for about a year, which took a lot. And I think ultimately, what it was, I talked to a lot of different companies in this space. And like over the time that I was at Hampton Creek, the whole space just ballooned. There were so many companies being born, like almost every week, it seemed like. So worked with a bunch of those as a consultant, got to see what they were doing. And ultimately, the thing that like really made me want to do it was basically I really wanted to work at Shiru, and Shiru didn't exist. That was really what it was at the end of the day. I was like, there's this crazy opportunity to use kind of like low-hanging fruit technical solutions that already exist and address a massive market. And I'd also seen that like a lot of entrepreneurs we're jumping into this space with very little or no experience whatsoever. And I was looking at myself like, wait a second, I actually have a ton of experience. And I really like the leadership aspects of building a team and so on. And so it was just like, if I don't do this now, I'm going to really regret it later. And it's been one of the best decisions of my life. So really happy I've done it.
Incredible. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And you all have such innovative and successful companies, and you were speaking about scaling up. And I'm wondering, what was the one thing that you did that you think helped scale up your business effectively? And perhaps you can also share a bit more about where you are today and the growth you've experienced since you started your company.
Yeah, I'm assuming maybe I'll jump into that first and yeah, sorry. So yeah, we're still relatively early stage, right? Like our company is 3.5 years old, which for a synthetic biology company is like baby years still. So, we are kind of going from this awkward transition of like going from R&D and like lab scale innovation to commercialization, which has been a really fantastic journey. And we know it's just the start. I think one of the most interesting learnings is just like really the pace of change that you constantly go through as a company. And sometimes the days feel long, but the months are super short. And you look back even a year and like the whole company was so different 12 months ago than it is today. And that can be from your team or from your facilities or from your partnerships or whatever it is. So now we are starting to scale and like learning tremendous amounts along the way, because commercializing, biotech, biomanufactured products for like the food industry, like I even, have to like reposition how I think about it in terms of scale, because I can look at a 200-liter like big fermentation tank and be like, wow, that's really big. And I'm like, oh my God, it's tiny because we have to make food for like the whole world. So it's a crazy process, I think. But going from that like R&D stage into commercialization, it requires a different mindset. And that sometimes means like refreshing your team, bringing in new talent, like meeting new people. All of that is part of it.
Adele, I see you nodding. Do you have any ideas on your end as well?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely can relate on we are a like very unique supply chain, as you can imagine. And just the science and the R&D around it is just like really, really unique. So early days, like to put the supply chain together was like hunting scientists down all over the world that we hear have a certain specialty, and then like convincing them that they want to work on this crazy idea that didn't really exist. And now a lot of what we've built a lot of our supply chain in-house. And so a lot of our scaling up is vertically integrating our supply chain and building that ourselves. And so it's kind of a constant. I can certainly relate to Jasmine on who, constantly making new kind of relationships, meeting different scientists, meeting different companies. Do you build, do you buy, do you partner? Kind of there's a lot of strategic business development around kind of scaling the supply chain. And then we on kind of a more like go-to-market side, we started as a fully direct consumer company, and then we did get into the B2B2C side. So we partner with a lot of funeral homes. So going to market, through kind of a distribution channel now, and scaling that up. And yeah, we are a VC-backed company. So we've raised we're Series A, have raised about 17 million to date, or actually a little more than that. We just closed some capital right now. So it's always a product of, the capital, the supply chain, the distribution, and resonate a lot with the really re-looking at yourself and your team and saying what's needed for this next stage. And, how do we always ensure that our talent is in a place that is supporting us to kind of like leapfrogging to our next stage of growth.
Thank you so much. Jacqueline, any thoughts on this, on scaling up business?
Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting journey for us over the last few years because of all the, I guess, world events that have happened in the last few years. Being in like a recruiting tech company that focuses on tech startups, it was definitely a lot of pivoting and growing and learning during COVID. And then now this year with the current macroeconomics and the way it's impacting tech startups in general, who are our customers, have been like an interesting adjustment period as well. So there's definitely been a lot of growth and changes from our product, our platform, and our team over the last few years. In terms of where we're at, our business model and our product has changed a lot over the last few years, as most tech startups do. We actually started as like a half B2B and half like B2C product, where we did sell to consumers and we sold to businesses. And then earlier this year, we decided to just double down and focus on our B2B product, which was much easier for us to kind of focus and build a more scalable platform from that perspective. And so our product is still like, building for scale. But in terms of scale, like we've worked with close to 50,000 developers to use our platform, a bunch of like tech companies of various sizes. But I think in terms of like what excites me most about our progress and how our product has made an impact is that companies are changing their opinion about how they hire. And I think, it ties to the mission, but I remember like some companies we worked with who, when we first chatted with them, they had very strict opinions around, I only hire ex Facebook, ex Google engineers. And then now after using and trying our product, are much more open-minded to the idea that I can hire someone who's a self-taught developer, I can hire a bootcamp grad, or I can hire someone from a community college, because they recognize that talent can come from anywhere. So I think that's the progress that like I want to measure our success on, is like, how much do you actually impact someone's ability to think about talent, and do they actually change their behavior based on what your product was meant to be built for.
Very interesting. And I know we have many entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs in the event today. And I would love to know what are the best resources available for those looking to start a business? Are there any tools like books, apps, podcasts that you would recommend to anyone? Because this is a Toolbox series event, and we're really trying to provide the audience with concrete tools when they leave the event. So feel free to jump in.
Well, this is a shameless plug for my my MBA program, but the Acton School of Business is fantastic. I wasn't planning to get an MBA. I was like, I'm just going to go start a company. And they were these entrepreneurs that all taught at UT in Austin, and they wanted to do all this experimental stuff, and the business program wasn't letting them. So they're kind of these mavericks that decided to leave and go start their own thing. And it's basically taking like all of the lessons learned from all the companies that they've built and putting it together into an entire program. So they have like a course on people, like a full course, just like dedicated to people management and people systems, which is not traditional in a normal business program. And, cash and valuation. How do you think about valuing your business, and operations and customers? And it's very Socratic method. So it's just like, it was so practical and so useful. And I still to this day go back and I read stuff that were notes written by our teachers who were just entrepreneurs. And it was like the quality of questions that they asked themselves and navigating different phases of the life cycle of their businesses. I couldn't say enough good things about it. It was fantastic. So that's a good tool, I would say.
Super cool. That sounds amazing, Adele. I'll build on that. I think so. Shiru went through Y Combinator as well. Jacqueline, we were the same year. I don't know what season you were. We were summer 19. I think that Y Combinator, obviously, that's like a very specific selective like incubator you can go through. But they open source like a lot of their content, like almost everything. And so if you go on the Y Combinator website, they have, something that's really tangible, super practical. They have like a fundraising guide, a Series A guide, and it basically tells you like step by step how to build a company, how to fundraise, how to run a fundraising process. It's extremely practical, and I'm typically someone who likes to read a textbook to learn how to do something, and that is not necessarily how building a company works, except for that program you're talking about, Adele, which sounds amazing. But yeah, I found that was like a very tactical kind of guide to learning a lot of this information. The other one that I'll throw out there for those of you who are considering, jumping into the CEO role of a company, there's a book I came across very recently that I really wish I read like 4 years ago, which is called The Great CEO Within. The author is Matt Mochary, which again, it's like a handbook for how to be a CEO and like build your company and do it from day one so that it's scalable. And like, man, oh man, do I wish like I had some of those lessons early on of like, don't give people titles, just call them head of XYZ until you're 12 employees or whatever it is. But like, there are like certain like frameworks that I'm like, whew, would have saved some trouble if I had like some of those tips earlier on.
I literally had those two as resources as well, Jasmine. But to build on it, I mean, the Y Combinator like database is excellent. I mean, not only is there just resource guides that you can like get tips from, but there's actually also just downloadable things that you can actually use for customers. So I remember when we were trying to, sell to our first like enterprise customers, I'm like, I literally have no idea how to put together this legal document. Like, there's just a ton of things you can just download and like use like from scratch. Same with like safe documents if you want to raise investment money from angels. Like you don't need to pay a lawyer for that. So it's great for like that. Their YouTube channel is also great. They have like a lot of videos that kind of just talk about very common things that you might be thinking about as an early stage entrepreneur, like how do I find a co-founder, or how do I come up with good ideas and stuff like that. So I would recommend that. to add one more book, it's a book that me and my team read together, was called Escaping the Build Trap. It's good for more of your traditional like software B2B type of product, but kind of this idea of having a little bit more of a product mindset when you're building a company. So that's also something I would recommend.
A few more I would throw in because you guys are like sparking ideas. A lot of VCs look to be value add in this way and have good resources. So I know like First Round Capital does a really good job of this, Founder Collective, like a lot of them will have on their mediums like blog content and or on their website. So Sequoia Capital, great content. So there's a lot to be said with those. And then Shopify actually has amazing content if you're looking to start more of an e-commerce business. I feel like I'm biased now that I am building a VC-backed company. My next one will not be VC-backed. So if you're like looking to do more of a bootstrap route, like Shopify has really, really good content too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's very, very helpful, I'm sure. And before we get to the audience questions with Abdal, I would love to hear your thoughts on an important issue. So studies have found that I think about 75% of women in leadership positions have experienced imposter syndrome across their professional journeys. And it's such a serious problem because it can be a barrier for many to just launch their business idea. I think it would be very helpful for our audience to know, how do you overcome self-doubt or imposter syndrome? Jasmine, I see you. Lavin, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. It's an interesting statistic, and I'm curious what it would be to survey men on that, because pretty sure that everyone has imposter syndrome. It's not just women. I think women tend to be very self-aware, so maybe they're just able to recognize it a little bit better. But that's my own personal take on it. I think, it certainly, I'm not going to call it imposter syndrome because I just like want to move away from that term. But it's being comfortable with risk, right? That's really what it is at the end of the day. And certainly as an entrepreneur, you have to basically like paint a picture of the future where you're not certain that you can build that future, but you have to like paint that vision of the future for your investors, for your first hires, for yourself, for your spouse, like for whoever is coming along on the journey, right? And I think that, for me, it's just been important to surround myself with people that also believe in me and the fact that I can do that and build that future, and just like get rid of the noise, like naysayers, folks who are like harping on how hard it is or how, bad it is for women in leadership. Like, I don't have time for that. So I think it's like, for me, it's been like very focused and targeted on like, signal to noise, where the signal is like where I want to go, and spending time with people who like really believe in that shared vision of the future.
I can go. Oh my God, I have so many thoughts on this. Yeah, agree with a lot of what Jasmine said. And especially the like having people in your corner that believe in you. Everybody is an armchair expert and everybody has opinions. And I love the Brene Brown quote about like the man in the arena ultimately is the entrepreneur. Like, you're with the woman in the arena, and there's a lot of people who want to throw opinions from cheap seats. And, if they're not in the arena and have been in the arena and know what it's like kind of take it with a grain of salt, and don't take it on as like, and I've completely made this mistake of like taking what somebody else's perception of something is like my truth. And I've gotten to do a lot of kind of work on that of just like, no, like I need to trust myself, and I need to trust that like, because I am the person kind of standing in fighting the battles day to day of building a company, like, really trust myself and trust my gut. And so a lot of it is cultivation of self-trust. And then I can point to so many investors where I have investors that like just are like, you got this, and I believe in you, and like go get after it. And those are the people that you want, and like it's just, life is too short and building businesses are too hard to have people that aren't like that. And I think too, something I've noticed for myself, and I maybe see in other female founders, is just like there tends to be a high bar for, and I'll just speak personally in my experiences, like I was a recovering perfectionist. And so lowering the bar on like what, perfection looks like, or what good enough looks like, or ready enough. And that applies to me personally of like, am I ready to do this thing yet? And getting to do the work of, there's no such thing as like being ready. I just get to like trust in myself. And as Jasmine was saying, like convince myself first that like I am the woman for the job and I can do it. And, because so much of it is just like leading with confidence, even when you may not be sure yet, like it's at least you can be confident and allow that confidence to kind of propel you forward. And we've overcome some obstacles that I was like, I have no idea how we're going to make it through this. And we did, and so it's like, as long as the vision is like what leads and I trust myself, like the how starts to take shape and starts to figure itself out. But I get tested on that all the time. It's like one of my business coaches says, like, the bigger the game, the bigger the breakdowns. And it's so true. Like there's breakdowns that you're just like, oh, this is putting me at my edges. And that's just the constant work, is like learning how to expand the comfort zone to be able to like withstand them.
I think just hearing Jasmine and Adele too, it's kind of like that is also a solution to some of the self-doubt. You're hearing other entrepreneurs being like, I'm feeling this too. I'm going through all these challenges, and just being like, you're not alone, right? And I think sometimes having just another friend entrepreneur where you sometimes just check in, chat with each other, you both realize you guys are all going through shitty times, then it's just somewhat easier. But for me, in terms of, self-doubt, I've always found that the thing that, picks me back up every time I'm like wondering, like, what am I doing with my life, is like just talking to like our users. And that's a really simple thing. And it's definitely like the YC mantra, but like every time I'm like, okay, is this even worth it? Or does this even make sense? I just book feedback calls with our users, and it just makes all the difference. Like every time I'm talking to our users and they're like, honestly, like I couldn't have gotten a job without Hatchways, or like, you don't understand, I hate interviewing because every time I interview, I literally like lose my brain and I sound so dumb every time I am put on the spot. I'm like, yeah, exactly. That's exactly why we're building this company. And so I just think like reminding yourself day in and day out, like, why did you start this company? Who are you building it for? Really reminding yourself who you're building it for, I think it solves the self-doubt.
Yeah, I love that, Jacqueline. That's awesome. It totally like grounds you. I'll just add one more thought to it, which is, imposter syndrome implies that you're comparing yourself to someone else or a group of other people. And I think what's been important for me personally is to recognize, like, while I feel like I might not know everything, I know more than like a whole lot of other people, and the people who I might be comparing myself to, they definitely don't know everything. So like nobody does, right? And that's, I think the camaraderie, then the common thread that you're hearing from us is like, you figure it out as you go. Nobody has all the answers. And like, I've definitely done this where I like look at companies that, seemingly are in the headlines, have raised lots of money, whatever it is. And I'm like, oh, they must have all the answers. They must have like really figured this out. And then you meet the founders and they're like totally normal people who are just getting along like step by step, just like I am. And, they have other challenges, and that's just the way it goes. But it's important to recognize that nobody has all the answers. And therefore, like, either we're all imposters or nobody is.
Amazing. I could not agree more. And I think we have some great advice to reflect on. And we have a bit more time, so maybe I can ask a few more questions. And I'm wondering, Adele, you were talking about just facing some challenges and obstacles. And if you had to tell us about one of the biggest challenges you faced and how you faced it in your entrepreneurial journey, I think it would be helpful for our viewers.
Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh, man, how much time do we have? like even just recently, it's been a very challenging, last year with COVID and the impacts it's had on global supply chain. And we're in the process of bringing all of our production in-house and building our own diamond machines from scratch. And so just delays in getting different parts and pulling that all together. And one of the parts that we use in every single growth cycle, our main supplier was in Ukraine and they just got bombed. And so, jumping through every hoop that we can. And it's kind of this balance of making sure that we have sufficient capacity for, because we have a lot of demand. So we have more demand than capacity. So we actually had to pull back, some of our forecast and, then had a bank freeze our facility, which put us in a major cash crunch. And then we got a fundraise. So it's just like, and we've navigated it, like we've landed all the planes and but it really is, I think, I love what Jasmine is saying of just, I think there's kind of like the headline version that you hear, and then there's the real talk, real behind the scenes. And I know that Jacqueline can relate to that too. It's just every company has seasons like that. And I think so much of it is how do you as a team rally when, times get tough and you're like, all right, like all hands on deck, we can do this. We got this. It's about staying focused on the vision, leaning into the customer and like why you are doing it and not letting fear creep in and allowing belief to lead. And for us, that's always how the plane has landed. That's always how we've gotten the funding that we needed, or enrolled the scientists that we needed, or kind of closed the gap. And so, it's like no business is going to be built without like not just challenges, but like existential moments. And we've had a few of them, in our past. And my fiance has picked me off the floor, like, multiple times. And so it's not something to even sugarcoat. It's really, really hard and really dark some days. And I just love what Jacqueline's saying is like, when you talk to your customer and you get a real connection as to like why you're doing this, like I'll hand deliver diamonds and just like sit in somebody's living room and watch them open their loved one's diamond. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's why we're here. This is like, this makes it all worth it. And I think just from a personal side, it's like every time we face a challenge, like I know that I'm stronger for it. I know that have a greater capacity on the other side of it. And my team does too. And like, it can make us stronger as a unit and stronger, me and my co-founder stronger. So, I get to be grateful for them, even though they can really test us sometimes.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing this. And it's interesting because, we're living in a time of multiple crises, including the pandemic, including the Ukraine war. And I'm wondering how were you, Jasmine, impacted by the COVID crisis, the pandemic?
Yeah, it's a great question. Interestingly, I guess with the phase of the business where this was kind of like R&D days for the most part, we weren't necessarily impacted in a negative way. If anything, I think that COVID and the issues that resulted from COVID regarding supply chain of milk, meat, eggs, etc., really surfaced a lot of the problems in the food system that are exactly why we're building Shiru. So I think if anything, it provided a more general awareness to the issues that we really do need to tackle as a food system. And ultimately it was a lot of like tailwinds, I would say, to like the whole, effort of alternative proteins, which we benefited from too, in terms of like, having investors better understand the critical need for, more reliable sources for key ingredients, for shifting to plant-based diets, even the onset of like, why COVID resulted because of, us having to eat animals and having them grown in, close proximity to one another, and thinking about how do we prevent the next pandemic? Like this comes back to our food system. And it's actually been, it was a great yeah, so I think there was like a lot of awareness that it brought to what we were doing as a business, given that we were like still in like product development mode. It didn't necessarily impact us in a meaningful strategic way. Just brought a lot of awareness to what we were doing and focus as well. Definitely from an operational standpoint, it was tough because we have like labs and people need to come into the lab to do work. And so we're working in shifts and so on. But, you know, that's all behind us now. And that's how we started as a business. So like if we started like that, if we hired during COVID, like, I don't know, we did, I think we came out pretty strong.
Amazing, thank you. And Jacqueline, I mean, you work in the tech industry, and we've been doing I think a lot of the audience has done interviews online during the pandemic. I'm wondering, how has your business model evolved over the course of the pandemic?
Yeah, the pandemic was interesting. Similar to Jasmine, it actually impacted us in a more positive way because companies started to go remote and people started to just adjust their interviewing and just their teams based on the new remote world, which means they were looking for more software solutions. They were open to hiring overseas, which means that you are investing more in new types of interviews because you have to adapt to like how people interview it in different places. So COVID was fueled our business a little bit. Challenges that we faced with other crises in the world. I mean, with the Ukraine war, it was another weird challenge that we faced was like one of our senior engineers was living in Russia. And like a lot of the payments, you couldn't pay people in Russia when you have employees there. And so like banks were shutting off like your ability to make payments to Russia, like other payment services we were using. We had to send cryptocurrency and that's how he got paid. It was just such a weird challenge that like you wouldn't anticipate. But that was something we had to navigate through. We definitely got a lot more impacted this year with the current macroeconomic environment with the looming recession, where, as you see in the tech world, like tens of thousands of layoffs happening, lots of hiring freezes, a lot of uncertainty with the market. So we had to scale back. A big challenge we faced in the middle of this year was having to do layoffs because of that. That was a really big challenge that, you can't really prepare for, and it doesn't really get any easier, but that was, like Adele said, like it makes you stronger, you learn from it. And it gives you more confidence that you can solve bigger problems that you'll encounter in the future.
Definitely. Thank you. Well, I will now pass it over to my colleague from McGill Alumni, Abdal, for the Q&A with the audience, which I'm sure has many questions for you.
Thank you, Nora. You did a wonderful job. And yes, almost too many questions. So I will pick and choose as much as we can to ensure that it's relevant for the majority of our audience. And at the end, we'll also share how, of course, you can stay in touch with the wonderful entrepreneurs we're speaking with. So without further ado, let's get started. This one's for Jacqueline, just because your business is focused on this. And we've been getting a variety of this question, just phrased in different ways. What do you look for in your employees when hiring, and who was your first hire?
Oh, I love this question. Okay, so our first hire. Okay, actually, I love this story. So he actually came through our platform, did one of our assessments. He did so well on it. And we thought, okay, every company who's going to interview him is going to love him. But he was hard of hearing. So he couldn't do your traditional like phone interviews because you need captions or whatnot. And even in the time it was like in-person interviews, he couldn't properly like perform in panel interviews because lots of people are talking and it's hard to read people's lips when you have to interact with so many people at once. And so he never got an offer from the companies that we had matched him with. And me and my co-founder at the time were like, this is a true diamond in the rough. Like, he is brilliant. We're not really ready to hire yet, but we kind of want him. So let's just bring him on as like a contractor, and then he was just amazing. And that was such a true testament of like our platform being able to identify talent that just gets overlooked in traditional interview processes. So that was our first hire. he was honestly a true superstar. And yeah, like I can't say enough good things about him. In terms of what I look for in people on my team, I mean, I think at an early stage startup, you really need somebody who is connected to the mission and is driven from that perspective. Like everyone has said there are so many challenges that you go through as an early stage startup. And if you're not internally motivated, it's really easy to just go to the next startup that's paying you more. So I think like internal drive and motive and like a connection to the mission, and at an early stage, like just someone who is a good collaborator and communicator is always something else to look for.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Adele, would love to hear from you on the same question.
Yeah, I mean, I love Jacqueline's answer. I think it's really true, especially it depends different stages of a company. Absolutely. You look for different things, or I look for different things. And early stage collaborative is a very big piece. And just a willingness to wear a lot of hats. As a younger company, like even now, like our team is 30, and we still need to wear a lot of hats, and there isn't like a designated person for this thing or that thing. And just having people willing to raise their hand and be like, hey, I'll run with that. I got this. So an adaptability, a willing, like embracing change, ability to handle change well, being just eager to create great things together, and it not needing to, be specifically in your job description to, be willing to take it on. Somebody who is like I love self-motivated and also willing to kind of like learn on their own as well. Because I think that's there's not a ton of time as a startup to be kind of sitting down and doing like formal coaching and development. The company kind of has to hit a certain size and scale before, just as a whole company, you have the capacity to really like develop. And so folks that are willing to, learn on their own and be like, you know what, I don't know how to do that, but like, I'm going to go research it and I'll figure it out. And, do you know somebody who's good at this? And willing to just kind of like be resourceful, and figure things out or ask people how to do things. Yeah, I think a lot of that is it, and just like a good attitude, giving people the benefit of the doubt, and I think optimism goes a long way. When you're building things and something may not work out, like just a positivity and an optimism and a resilience to just like, all right, like, okay, let's try this other thing. No big deal. So that's a lot of, I would say, what I look for, a lot of the cultural qualities.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Jasmine, anything to add on that?
Really, Jacqueline and Adele covered so much of it. I think, what it summarizes for me, it's like an owner mentality. And so, you see trash on the floor, you pick it up. You see something broken, you go and fix it. Don't assume that someone else is going to do it, because we all have to lean in to like really make it work. As a company that a large part of our workforce, I think it's like 75% is R&D focused. We hire for really specific skill sets. And so you might think that it's like a long checklist of like, do you know this instrument? Do you have this technique under your belt? Blah, blah, blah. Much more important than like, do they check all the technical skill set boxes is the attitude, as Adele was talking about. It's that owner mentality, that attitude, that optimism, that like go get it kind of spirit. That can't really be taught. The other stuff can be taught, right? If you have the willingness to learn, if you have that hunger for what you're doing, even if you don't tick all the boxes and you haven't looked at that piece of equipment before, we got you. We'll help you learn that part of it, right? So I think it's just that constant balance of like, the things that are like non-negotiable versus the things that can be, you can fill that in along the way.
Fantastic. I like seeing just that thread running across all three of you, and we're getting comments on that as well from the audience. So that's fantastic. I'll come back to you, Jasmine. And we've already touched on this a little bit, as was referred earlier with the imposter syndrome. But as an entrepreneur myself, this is a question that I always ask fellow entrepreneurs: is how do you manage your stress and your mental health?
Oh man, I don't know if I'm an example for this. I have two kids, which have both been born at the same time of running my startup. So I have a 3-year-old and a 7-month-old. So, I go from like negotiating in the office to like negotiating with a 3-year-old at home. So there's a lot of stress. I think it's, managing it comes down to like finding the peace within myself. For me, that means like a 20-minute walk with my dog, just me and my dog every morning, and making the time for that, like trying to eat healthy food. Like it's really the small things that have like an outsized effect when you're that busy and that like consumed in meeting the needs of other people, I would say. So just for me, it's like finding those small moments of the things that like really have high impact for me. And so it's like eating well, my dog, hopefully some time with my husband from time to time, those types of things.
Thank you, Jasmine. Jacqueline, how do you manage your stress and mental health?
I also don't know if I'm the best person for this, but maybe I have just a small tip to add, not a solution to stress. I've just found, if you're starting a company and you're really motivated by startups, you're probably driven by progress and seeing outcomes and achievement. And I think a lot of times in a startup, sometimes you see a lot of progress, sometimes you are very stagnant, sometimes you regress, and it's hard to manage that. And so I've found sometimes doing something on the side where you can see progress a little bit more regularly is a nice thing to do. And that could be small. It could just be, I want to read a book and like you see progress in that, or you want to learn a new skill and you see the progress on your skill development or fitness goals or whatnot. But just having something on the side where you do see progress and achievement that's kind of separate from your startup is something that I found as a good way to cope with stress.
Absolutely. Adele, I'll ask you this, I guess, in a slightly different manner. And this is a version of a question we received as well, is how do you boost your productivity without causing burnout?
Yeah. Decide what matters, just 80-20, like it's a constant, Pareto evaluation of like, where is my time best spent? Where can I really move the needle? This was something I really admired about Acton and the way they designed their curriculum with the business program I was talking about is like they intentionally gave you more work than you could possibly do. There was no way you could possibly do it all. And that was kind of the thing. And they had this whole course that was called Life of Meaning. And, it was really emphasizing the importance of like, don't neglect your family, don't neglect your mental health, make sure you're like putting those rocks in first. So you're like, how do I do it all if I'm supposed to do all that and all this work? And really, like for me, the outcome or the lesson was like, you don't do it all. You figure out what is the most important thing and you're okay with stuff falling off. And as a recovering perfectionist, that was really hard for me of like, wait, you're telling me I can drop balls or I'm like supposed to drop balls. And yeah, sometimes at the end of the day, like my inbox is out of control and I don't respond to people for a few weeks, but that matters less than, the time I get to spend with my fiance and making sure I go to bed on time. And then really making sure like the start of the day, I'm like, the most important needle moving thing I can do today is XYZ. So if nothing else happens today, I'm getting that thing done. And, yeah, I think that that's really the most important thing is like having an okay relationship with not getting it all done. Cause like, I think that's what creates a lot of burnout is just like hustle, grind, try to get it all done and being like, you know what, I'm going to get the most important stuff done and I'm going to prioritize my mental health because I'll be so much more effective if I'm sleeping well, if I'm journaling, if I'm like taking the time for myself. Because as a leader, a huge part of leadership is who you're being as a leader, not what you're doing and not what you're saying. And so I know that I don't show up well if I'm not sleeping well, if I'm stressed, if I'm overwhelmed, that gets all over my team and then everybody else feels that. And so I really think some of the highest return on investment, time is like the downtime, the sleep time, so that I can show up in a way that like I can be the best leader I can be. So that's a bit of how I think about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Moving over, excuse me, to a slightly different topic. We want to talk a bit about networking. And this word's come up again a few times. I'll start with you this time, Jasmine, if that's okay with you. But talk us a little bit through what are some of your tips for our audience members on how they can grow their network? And specifically, how can they go about to find mentors and advisors during and at the start of their entrepreneurship journey?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's one of the most critically important things, honestly, to being successful as an entrepreneur, because it's how you're going to meet your first investors, your first team members, your first customers, like all of it. I think for me, like a lot of it just comes down to saying yes to all kinds of things, and like almost as many things as you can tolerate in the early days, like within reason. But like, you get invited to events, and that could be in person or virtual, like this one, and being really proactive about reaching out to people and like meeting them for coffee. Every time you do that, end it with, who else should I be speaking to? And that person will probably give you like 2 or 3 additional names. And, maybe those people are going to be the ones who open significant doors for you. So I think it's like a constant ongoing thing. And, I've realized, especially from, the team building side and hiring people, and, now being at a stage of the company where like we really need like industry experts. We need people who like really know their stuff and have been doing this for a while. For me, it's like my job now is like basically all networking. Like that's kind of what it boils down to, like networking and like relationship management, which is I should always be meeting people who might be a future advisor, might be a future hire, might be a future investor, but it's like following all those threads again and again. And it can be pretty tiring. So you kind of have to pace yourself, but it's like, it's really important. And in those moments, like just try to focus on being as present as you possibly can. And that means like eye contact. That means like put down your phone, close your laptop, like be present. It makes a really outsized impact, I think.
Absolutely. Jacqueline, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jasmine had a few good points. I think like the only thing I would add is I think maybe just even changing your perspective on what you think of as networking, because I remember thinking like networking can feel kind of like slimy sometimes, or sometimes it has a bad rap. And so like, how do you wrap your head around it? And I actually think of networking in like, who do you actually just enjoy spending time with and talking to? And you don't always have to think about like getting something out of the interaction. A lot of times the people who ended up being customers of mine or investors of mine, or people who, introduced me to someone who was super valuable I didn't go in with that intention of an ask, right? I kind of just had a really good, connection with this person. I felt like we vibed really well and we just stayed in contact. And of course, it's always easier to have an ask when you have built rapport with someone. And so I think that would just be my tip around networking, is just like, think about it like you're just building relationships with people that you actually enjoy talking to, you learn from, who you can teach them something. And I think those are natural relationships that can eventually turn into something that could be very valuable for you.
Perfect. Adele, anything to add?
Yeah. I really enjoy, well, similar to what Jacqueline's saying, like, I don't like the word networking, like, cause I don't feel like I ever did that. And like networking events are like, bleh, I can't, I'm so bad at small talk and trying to work a room. Like, I just really don't enjoy that. I enjoy sitting down and like really deeply knowing someone. And so that was an approach, I think, from early days I did, of just like, okay, who is like doing something really interesting? And if I didn't have any internal barrier about why that person should meet with me, like, why couldn't I meet with them? Like, why couldn't I get coffee with them? And that was how I got my first job in tech. Was I knew I wanted to get into product marketing. I did a lot of research around, what are different areas of a business, of marketing. And I determined like product marketing, that sounds like what I really want to do. But gosh, there's a 5-year experience usually requirement to get into that role. So I was like, how do I shortcut that? And so I went in Austin. I was like, who are the best product marketing leaders in Austin? And if I could cold reach out to them, ask them if I could buy them coffee, and just like pick their brain on product marketing and everything about how do you get into this field, how this, how that, and then kind of pitch them at the end, like, hey, would you be open to me, just doing a project for you? And if it goes well, then maybe we could talk about like what a full-time role looks like. And ended up getting 3 different opportunities. They went really well. And then I got to pick who I wanted to be my boss and mentor me. And that was just a really great experience that then just consistently has been how I approach things now. Of like, last year, I was like, okay, who are the best consumer CEOs that I would love to learn from? And if I just believe that, I was worthy of talking to them, like, why not cold reach out to them and see if I could, hop on a Zoom if they'd be willing to chat, and be really thoughtful with the questions, but just make sure that, it's time well spent and they're enjoying the conversation too. And, we just get to learn from each other. And I think that's how a lot of Eternova has been built, and doors have been opened and investors have been found, is just a willingness to say, who do I really want to talk to? And like, I'm going to go see if I can like connect with that person. And not just hope that maybe it happens in a happy hour that they show up,
Absolutely. Well, again, we're getting a lot of questions now, so I'm going to do a rapid fire. So this will be 1 question per speaker. And if you really feel like you need to add something, you can do so. But if not, we're going to move on to the next question. So Jasmine, what's the best piece of advice you would give to entrepreneurs trying to fundraise with VCs?
I'll give you a quick answer. Set your own valuation. Don't let anyone tell you what the valuation is. It's yours.
Oh, I got goosebumps. That was awesome. Adele, how did you prepare to pitch on a TV show?
Do mock runs. Face planted my mock run. Really glad I did that one. And know that it's not the same as in a regular investor pitch. You have to make good TV. So there's an art to that.
I actually love that. Jacqueline, tell us a little bit about what it was like selling your first business and then deciding to start another one.
Oh, the selling process was awful. It's like kind of like fundraising, but worse. I'll leave it at that. In terms of starting my next company, I mean, I think I knew like 2 months after I started working at my next company that I wanted to start my next company. So I had already, I think 2 months in, we were starting to brainstorm new ideas.
Awesome. Adele, tell us a little bit about the most important metrics for your business and how you measure them.
Yeah. Obviously top line bookings, growth, margins, gross margins, cash flow. Cash is king as a startup, and just managing cash really, really tightly. Yeah, then kind of leading indicators within a funnel, how many sales qualified leads, how many held consultations, things like that.
Thank you. Jasmine, could you just talk to us a little bit about how you try to foster creative thinking within your company and how you encourage your employees to come up with new ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's, programming that we do to some extent, but I think that's like infrequent and quite informal, but like much more than that, it's having a leadership team that models it day in and day out. And so that means active listening. I'm definitely not the loudest voice in the room. I hired people that are way smarter than me, and so I need to listen to them. And that trickles down throughout the organization, right? That's like how we expect every leader to be listening to their team. And any idea is a good idea. Like, we don't throw out, ideas just because they, just because. So everything's to be considered. And I think that that's really important when you have, a company that really relies on innovation to be successful. So it comes with modeling it, a lot of listening, a lot of like challenge directly and challenge productively, not shooting people down, not making them feel bad, having that psychological safety to be able to like go outside of your comfort zone, throw something out there and see what sticks, and doing that actively, so people have a reference point for what it looks like.
Thank you so much. Jacqueline, this question is for you. What piece of advice do you have for entrepreneurs who are struggling right now?
I mean, I think I just, tying it back to my former answers, just talk to the people, talk to your users, and remind yourself why you started the company. Just know that every problem that you go through now is one less problem you're going to go through in the future because you learn from it.
Thank you. Excellent. All right, we're back to asking our full panel this really important question. What is one piece of key advice that you would give to aspiring entrepreneurs, and particularly women entrepreneurs today? I'll start off with Adele.
I would say one of the things that I'm glad that we did with Eternova is really thinking through the business model before we started it. I think there's definite startup like fever where people just like want to start building something, and it's the kind of reality check is you're going to spend like 5 to 10 years of your life on something, and to find out in year 5 that there's really crappy margins, or you're not going to be able to sell it to, there's nobody to acquires the company, or that it was really difficult to protect price and you had to have a race to the bottom price war with other people. Like, it can be so discouraging if those like elements of the business model weren't really thought out in the beginning. So that was something we were looking at when looking at the lab grown diamond business. We were like, this looks like it's going to become a race to the bottom from a price standpoint. How do you really differentiate building just a diamond company? And that's exactly what's happening. I'm so glad that I'm not in that business right now and have spent like 5 years of my life on it. So I think just like being like really thinking through the business model, making sure it's the right fit for you, it's what you personally want to work on, and it checks a lot of boxes, is worth it because you're going to spend a lot of time on it.
Thank you, Adele. Jasmine, do you want to go next?
Sure, happy to. Yeah, I think, probably echoes what has been said earlier in the conversation, but lead with confidence. Trust in yourself. No one knows your business better than you do. They might know other things, but not your business as well. And so lead with that confidence, because I personally think it's super important that we get more women in leadership positions, that we get more women as founders and entrepreneurs. That's why I'm here today, because, if I think back 10 years, the examples that I had of like CEOs were not really that attractive to me, not people who I really wanted to emulate. I thought you had to be loud and arrogant and like, shout to make, your voice heard. And that's not true. And I think that I'm really excited to see more women in leadership positions setting the example and spreading that so that people of the next generation, the founders of the next generation, see examples of maybe something that resonates a little bit more with them. So yeah, just lead with confidence, go for it, take a leap, surround yourself with good people, and make sure to pay it forward to the next generation too.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. Jacqueline?
Yeah, it kind of ties to, I guess, a lot of advice that we've kind of touched upon earlier, but I think like my advice would just be like, don't be afraid to ask for what you want. I think, Jasmine mentioned it, even like with fundraising, just ask for what you want. Just tell people what your the valuation you want. Adele mentioned networking, like just ask for an introduction, ask to meet for coffee. And I think sometimes it's you know what you want, but you're afraid to ask. And honestly, there's just no harm in asking. So I would just say my advice is just ask for what you want.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Our final question of the night, this is for each of you. And we want to give you a platform, just, talk about how we could engage with you and your company. So Adele, what's the best way for our audience to engage with you and your company following this event?
Yeah, well, definitely follow us on our social channels. Our TikTok is popping off if you're a TikTok user. We've got a lot of followers over there. Instagram as well. Kind of a more thoughtful and really beautiful place to hear stories about our customers and our families and our loved ones. Like all the videos will make you cry. So I'm warning you that, but like happy cry. So it's all good. And yeah, you can find me on Instagram too, and you're welcome to reach out.
Thank you, Adele.
Like
Jacqueline? Sorry. Jacqueline.
Yeah, we spend most of our time on LinkedIn, so you can follow us on our LinkedIn page, yeah, feel free to connect to me on LinkedIn, or if you guys have questions or want to reach out, you can email me as well. It's just Jacqueline@hatchways.io.
Jacqueline. Jasmine.
I will echo what Jacqueline said. We're more of the LinkedIn variety at Shiru. So definitely follow our LinkedIn. We tend to do a lot of like thought leadership and education on the alternative and food tech space. There's a lot going on there. It's hard to make sense of it sometimes. And we really like to riff on that. So happy for you guys to follow our LinkedIn page, connect with me on LinkedIn personally as well. My email is Jasmine with no E, JASMIN @shiru.com.
Wonderful. Well, what an amazing event. Thank you all so much as we come to the end of our session. On behalf of the MWAA, the MYA board, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. We hope you left, or are leaving, I should say, with some valuable insights to help you navigate your entrepreneurial journey. A few personally that I'm taking away, on the topic of starting a company, as Jasmine put, build the companies you wish you could work at. And for those who are fundraising, lead with confidence and set your own valuation. On the topic of imposter syndrome, as Adele shared, lower the bar on what perfection looks like and build with confidence as well. And really decide what matters when you're trying to increase your productivity without burning out. And then finally, on the topic of your first hires, as Jacqueline put, and she is the expert with her company, look for people connected to your startup's mission with an internal drive. Don't be afraid to ask for what you want. Thank you, Adele, Jacqueline, and Jasmine, so much once again for being here. Thank you to the MWAA. Thank you to the MYA. Special shout out to KDOS, Irene from the McGill Alumni Association, and of course, to Nora and Noran as my fellow organizers. Thank you all so much. Have a great evening.